Hi there, students. I'm XS. That's little x, little s, which stands for extra sweet, because that's what I am. I'm a puppy-sensei, and I make Japanese language lessons to help you level up your abilities. So it's Valentine's Day, I guess. So I suppose we're going to do a special Valentine's-themed lesson. I mean, we did special holiday-themed lessons for a bunch of other holidays, too, so I guess it only makes sense that we would do one for Valentine's, too. Wait, does this mean that we have to do one based on White Day next month too? Because I don't know how I feel about that. I don't know. I'll think about it. Maybe a White Day plus a St. Patrick's Day combo special, little Celestia themed episode about plants or something. I don't play MTG after the incident that shall go without being named, but green and white were surely my colors when I did play. Anyway, I figured since today is supposed to be all romantic or whatever, I might as well teach you some romance-related words, right? But I've already said that today's lesson was going to be a verb review, so let's combine the two. We'll learn some romantic verbs. That surely won't go poorly. The point is to refresh your memory on the conjugation of verbs anyway, so I guess what better way to learn than, romantically? Okay, it makes no sense. I'm absolutely reaching here, but it's fine. It's fine. Anyway, let's get into it. Ikimashou! Oh my god, look what I just found. It's a bag of those delicious, chalky, sugar sweet Valentine's conversation heart thingies. I'm gonna be honest, I have a weird relationship with these things. This is gonna make me sound like such a little diva, but, I only eat the white ones. I just don't like them otherwise. I know that probably sounds like my green M&M moment, but I honestly kind of can't help it. I just find all of the other flavors of these hearts to be kind of gross, and it's only the white ones that I like. That's it. It's wintergreen, I think, the flavor of that one. All of the other ones, in my opinion, they just kind of taste too fruity or overly sweet to me. The white ones are just kind of chill and cooling. Wait, check this out though. These all have Japanese words on them. Kakkoi! We can use this though. This is going to be perfect for today's lesson. Okay, so this is a pink one and it says aisuru on it. Aww. Aisuru. Awesome, so we're starting right off with a complicated and somewhat confusing word. This is gonna go great. Why do I say that aisuru is a little bit confusing? Well, because I think that English learners of Japanese have a little bit of a love affair with the word for love that we don't really see mirrored in the Japanese language at all. I think there's often a desire for new learners of Japanese to want the ability to say, I love you. It's one of the first questions that I often get asked. A lot of my students want to learn the Japanese language so that they can impress their significant others, which is adorable, and being able to express love is a really quick way to impress somebody, right? So a lot of people will ask me how I say I love you in Japanese, and I tell them that it's suki desu. Because, well, here's the thing that you have to understand about Japanese. The Japanese language is designed in many ways to be a very indirect language. As you probably already know by now, I'm an interpreter. When I have a meeting between American and Japanese business people, one of the things that occurs rather frequently is that I'll have American dudes on one side expressing very concrete business desires. We want this thing accomplished on precisely this date, etc. And frequently on the other side, I'll get a response from the Japanese counterparts in the meeting with very considerable hedging. I don't know. And that's usually coming in place of actually trying to be respectful. Japanese is a language in which it's considered really rude to say no. And so even when you're turning somebody down for a date or something like that, you would usually respond, chotto, meaning that would be a little inconvenient, even if what you really feel inside is, no, 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 no. In a linguistic environment where it's usually better not to express deep emotion in a very overt or God's forbid, a very public way, it sort of makes sense that saying I love you is a bit too forceful, a bit too honest, maybe even a bit too vulnerable. If you want my honest opinion, I kind of lean in the Japanese direction on this too. This might get me canceled, but I think the words I love you are really overused in modern society. When we reserve some words like this for very special moments, moments that stand out for us as the most romantic and vital moments of our lives, well, then those words become all that more special. But when overused, you got the mail, I love you. You put your shoes away, I love you. You sneezed slightly, I love you. Well, then I love you kind of becomes less special, doesn't it? I mean, let's be honest, I do that too. I overuse I love you all the time, but it's mostly just because I adore you all so much and I can't help but say it over and over and over and over and over again. Anyway, all right, I've been editorializing on I love you for far too long, so let's actually talk about the conjugation of aisuru. So, I here is actually a noun. I is the noun for love, right? The feeling of love. If you've ever heard me talk about a suru verb before, well, that's what we have here. It's a noun with the verb suru kind of attached to it, and suru means to do. And together, that kind of forms a verb meaning to do that specific thing, right? So, aisuru means to do love. But really, it just means to love. As we well know by now, suru is an irregular verb. It behaves just a bit strangely when compared to some other verbs, mostly having to do with that first su sound in suru. That su sound is often going to change to a she sound, as it does when we form the polite conjugation for this verb. So that becomes aishimasu. You see it? Aishimasu. Very simple reminder here. Using the polite form of a verb does not mean that you are doing that verb politely. It means that you're speaking politely when you say what you're saying. The distinction between aisuru and aishimasu is not the way you're loving. The action of these two verbs is exactly the same. But instead, the difference between the plain form or the casual form and the polite form is the emotion and the mood of what you're expressing, yeah? It's the difference between saying, love ya, and I love you, right? So in one case, you would use like aishimasu because you want to be more formal. And you would use aisuru in cases where you're just maybe chatting with your friends or something like that, right? But again, I also want you to remember that aishimasu is not a common verb form that we use in a lot of circumstances, like maybe especially with your friends. So we're much more concerned about the grammatical use over the semantic one here. All right, so what we're building as we conjugate these verbs is basically a matrix of conjugation forms. No, not that kind of matrix. I mean this kind of matrix. Okay, so for today's verb review, we're really going to be looking at these 8 conjugations, plus 1 in a moment too, so 9 total. 9, like a love potion. We're going to look at the affirmative and the negative forms, the past and the non-past forms, and the plain and the polite forms. And then also we'll add in the te form because it's important. In our matrix, we're ultimately going to have 9 different forms, and that's where we're going to start today with our review of verb forms. So let's keep filling out this little matrix, yeah? All right, so now we've added the affirmative past forms. That's aishita and aishimashita. Yeah? I loved, casual and polite, respectively. Yeah? Again, remember that what we're actually conjugating here is the suru verb, but forming the affirmative past in the plain or casual forms means conjugating suru into shita, and in the polite form, we end up with shimashita. Yeah? Suru will obviously always work this way anytime that we're using it with any noun to create a new suru verb. Or, of course, even if we're just using suru by itself, which we totally can do. We're making a lot of progress here, but let's keep going. So next we're going to look at the negative non-past forms. 愛しない、愛しません, I do not love. Suru in the plain negative becomes shinai. That little nai form means not or negative in many different situations. And in the polite form, we end up with shimasen. That only leaves us with the negative past forms, and we'll be done with our little matrix. Well, mostly, but anyway, that doesn't matter. Okay, so that plain past negative form that we see here, right? I've just added it, and it's ai shinakatta. That does look a little bit different. So maybe this is sort of the most difficult conjugation that we're going to be dealing with for this specific matrix, right? So in the plain past negative, we end up with ai shinakatta. The nai in shinai is going to conjugate into the past as shinakatta. That's actually conjugating in a way that's relatively similar to an e adjective. Do you remember how we conjugate an e adjective? I know it's been a minute, but basically let's take the adjective takai. Takai means high or expensive. And in the past negative tense, for us to say takai as an adjective, it was not expensive in Japanese, we're going to say takaku nakatta. Ne? Yeah, okay. So takaku nakatta looks somewhat similar to what shinakatta looks like, right? They kind of look similar. And that actually makes sense because nai sort of acts as an adjective here. That's getting ahead of ourselves, but that's perfectly fine. The important thing is that aisuru in the plain negative past is going to become aishinakatta. Okay, daijoubu desu. On the other hand, with the polite past negative, all we're doing is we're adding deshita, which is actually the past conjugation of des. And we're adding that to the end of the negative form of shimasen. And that gives us aishimasen deshita. Okay. That's actually going to hold true for basically every verb in this same polite past negative slot. So anything that goes in this final slot in our matrix here, in the polite negative past slot, is really just going to add deshita to the negative non-past polite. Yeah. So that's very, very, very easy. Yeah. And that makes creating the polite past negative so simple, since we're really only ever having to add deshita. And so there's no additional conjugation really that's required. We're not really changing anything. And this is what I'm talking about when I discuss agglutination with Japanese verbs. There are just a lot of cases where we're just going to add small segments that kind of get glued on to other verb forms and other verb conjugations, and that makes for longer and more complex verbs with more robust and more interesting meanings. It feels like we've spent a long time talking about just one verb, but we've created a whole really worthwhile verb conjugation matrix that's going to make it a lot easier for us to quickly conjugate some other verbs as we go along. But before we move away from aisuru, there's one more conjugation that we really need to add to our little list here. And that's the te form that we've also previously discussed. The te form is going to allow us to use the verb aisuru to make aishiteru. Aishiteru. Ne? Aisuru in the te form plus the active to be verb iru is going to make aishiteru. Verbs in the te iru form basically translate to I am currently doing that verb. But in the case of aishiteru, that's probably the most common and recognizable way to just say I love you in Japanese. So there's your answer. If you were asking me how do I say I love you in Japanese, usually you want to say aishiteru. Again, not to beat a dead horse here, but even though I say that this is the most logical translation for I love you and the most common way that we use the verb aisuru, that still does not make it any less rare to actually say the verb aishiteru. aishiteru is something that you really only say maybe a few dozen times in your life in total. Anyway, we really need to add the te conjugation to our matrix here, but there really isn't a particularly handy spot for it, so we're going to put it here. There we go. So why do I find it very important to add the te form here? Well, basically because the te form is a verb conjugation that we use all the time. We use it all the time, a lot. This is just a personal anecdote, but for me, I find that the two verb conjugations in Japanese that I use all the time in my everyday life are the mas form and the te form. And remember, there's a lot that we can do with the te form. On its own, it's sort of kind of like the continuative form for verbs. So it means like I do this verb and also I do this verb. For example, tabete nondeiru. I am eating and I am drinking, right? So we can connect two verbs with one in the te form and then the other in some other form. So first verb, te form, and then the second verb following, however you want that second verb to be. So it could be in the te iru form, or it could be in the mas form, or it could be in the masen form. It doesn't really matter, right? The important thing is first verb in the te form, and that makes a continuative that says, I do this and also I do this, or I did this and also I did this. Yeah? But that te form is also going to come very, very, very handy for us because it's going to allow us to do complex actions with linked verbs, like that te iru form that we talked about before, which is for activities that you're currently doing, or the te kudasai form for requesting something, right? Please do this verb. Okay, this feels like a really great matrix for us to start with. These are really the basic verb conjugations that we've already covered in my lessons, so this is a really great review. We can also use the same framework to do the same work with additional verbs. So let's see what else these conversation hearts have in store for us. What's next? All right, it's an orange one. Yuck. Probably my most yuck flavor out of all of these hearts. I am not a fan. To me, it doesn't even taste like an orange flavor. It just tastes like orange LaCroix. Blah. Anyway, this verb is horeru. It kind of means to fall in love, to fall for someone, head over heels, something like that. And it's not always an extremely positive thing either, because it sort of means to go stupid dumb with your love for somebody, to get silly over somebody in like almost a childish way. But, you know, maybe there's nothing wrong with that. Love doesn't need to be serious. I think it's fine for us to be silly when we're in love. Let's pull up our matrix for horeru. Okay, there we go. So what do we see here? Horeru is our plain affirmative non-past form. Okay, easy. Horeru, to fall for somebody. In the plain past, we get horeta, I fell for. Horenai is our negative non-past. And the plain negative past will be horenakatta. And all of these look relatively similar to what we expect based on our previous matrix with the suru verb in aisuru. Then in the polite form, we're going to get horemasu, horemashita in the past tense, horemasen for the polite negative, and exactly as we predicted before, for all verbs to make the polite negative past, we just add deshita to the end of the masen form to give us horemasen deshita. Horemasen deshita. I did not fall for somebody. Yeah? Okay. And lastly, we get that te form as horete. So we can create things like horete kudasai. Please fall stupidly in love with me. Okay. Weird request, but awesome. Now, all that is entirely sensible to us, right? Because horeru is an ichidan verb, and we know that ichidan verbs are pretty uniform. They're easy to predict, and they all follow the same pattern, so they're all going to look exactly like this same matrix. Just like taberu. Taberu will be exactly like this. Taberu, tabeta, tabenai, tabenakatta. Tabemasu, tabemashita, tabemasen, tabemasen deshita, and tabete. So really, that's ichidan verbs taken care of for us, right? We can fit really any ichidan verb into this matrix and we'll be fine. All right, let's see what's next. Aww, Idaku. I love this verb. It means to hug, to embrace, to wrap your arms around someone. I love hugs. But there's actually something interesting about the verb idaku in Japanese. And that's the fact that in casual conversation, people usually just say daku rather than idaku, especially when it's conjugated. So, idaku or daku is kind of sneaky like this, right? It's a little bit of a sneaky verb, right? It can be idaku and it can be daku, and that kind of like idaku, daku part is sort of hidden within the kanji. Do you see that? It's kind of hidden in there. And so when you see it, you go, idaku, daku, idaku, idaku. I don't know, it's kind of sneaky. It's not extremely common for verbs to kind of behave this way, to have this sort of casual sound change, especially if that sound change is taking place within a kanji. And so this verb is just a little bit odd, just a little bit different. But actually, these yellow hearts are also kinda rude because I always think that maybe they're white hearts. White hearts, my beloved. But no, I bite into it thinking that maybe it's a white heart, but it's actually yellow, but I didn't realize it was yellow. I thought maybe it was white, and when I bite into it, I realized that it's banana. Not that there's anything wrong with banana. I love banana flavoring in almost all other cases. Banana, top tier fruit. But I just think that these little yellow guys are a little bit too sweet for my tastes. So I feel like I've been tricked. Anyway, daku or iraku is a godan verb, right? And what we know about godan verbs is that they are a little bit more complicated when compared to ichidan verbs. So let's see how our matrix works with idaku or daku, right? So, okay, here's our matrix. And right away we can see that, yep, godan verbs are surely a bit more complicated, can't we? So we start with daku, right? That's the plain affirmative non-past. And then when we put it in the past plain, we get daita. Daita. Which feels very weird compared to what we did previously with ichidan verbs, right? And that's because godan verbs that end in ku are going to take an e sound when forming the plain past and not a ki sound, right? So daku becomes daita, and any verb that ends in ku like this, all ku godan verbs are going to follow this same pattern of becoming this ita form, right? Ita. Yeah. And in the negative plain non-past, we're going to get dakanai. Dakanai. Yeah? Godan verbs ultimately take all 5 of the Japanese vowel sounds as they conjugate. We will see that more with future conjugations too, but here we're getting that a vowel sound when we conjugate into the negative, right? So we're also going to retain that a sound into the negative past plain with dakanakatta. Ne? Yeah, dakanakatta. All right, so as kind of complicated as that is, the polite forms are much more in line with what we already expect based on an ichidan verb pattern. We get dakimasu, dakimashita, dakimasen, and dakimasen deshita. No problem there, right? That makes good sense to us, all right? And finally, we get our te form. And our te form is going to follow closely the same pattern as the plain past. So it's going to drop the ku from daku, and it's going to take an e bare vowel sound to create daite. Yeah, daite. One more thing that I should say about this verb. Well, not really this verb, a different verb actually. Dakishimeru is another kind of casual verb that you'll sometimes hear. It's sort of a conjugation of daku plus shimeru, and shimeru means to tighten. So dakishimeru means to hug tightly. I often hear it in songs in the form of dakishimetai, which means I want to hug you or I want to be hugged. Oh, also, because I know that you're going to ask me, no, the shi in shimeru is not the same kanji as the shi from shibari. They are distantly related, though. Okay, come on. There has to be a white one in here somewhere. Purple. Oyogu. we don't need to do this one. Oyogu becomes oyoida, just like ku godon verbs like daku that we saw above, right? So oyogu becomes oyoida. Just remember that when you see a verb that ends in gu, you can basically treat it very similarly to the way that you treated ku. So oyogu, oyoida, oyoganai, oyoganakatta, oyogimasu, etc., etc. Skip. Otto. Okay, this one is blue. Great. Favorite color, not favorite flavor. And the verb here is kakusu. It means to hide or conceal. I'm not really sure why that's supposed to be romantic exactly. Maybe it's because of kakurembo, which is the Japanese name for hide and seek. I guess that can be romantic. Anyway, we're kind of starting to get a groove here, so let's just see how kakusu conjugates, all right? Okay, so again, it's a godon verb, and it ends in su. So to conjugate it, we go from kakusu to kakushita, ne? And then kakusanai. Remember, in the nai form of godon verbs, we're going to be creating an ah sound. So then we have kakusanakatta. That's what we expect. In the mas form, again, super easy. Kakushimasu, kakushimashita, kakushimasen, and kakushimasen deshita. And finally, the te form, kakushite. Ne? Questions? No? I'll move on. Okay, come on, and... Dang it. Okay. To play, like a game. Fine. Okay. This one is pretty easy, actually. Okay, so yeah, all right. Asobu. Asobu, asonda, all right? Godon verbs that end in bu, mu, or nu are all going to take an nda ending in the plain past. So then we have asonda, and then that's going to conjugate into the negative non-past as asobanai, right? We're just taking that ah sound just like we saw before. And then, of course, we get asobanakatta. And, of course, the polite forms are also very predictable for us. Asobimasu, asobimashita, asobimasen, asobimasen deshita. And finally, asonde. It's just like asonda, right? That's just like the plain past, but we have de instead, right? It's still the te form. It just ends up sounding like a de sound because it comes immediately after an n sound, right? And that's going to be the case for a lot of godon verbs. Okay, but seriously, next. Maybe a white one. Maybe. Yeah, okay. Yomu. Yomu. Don't leave me on red, or whatever. I kind of feel like these hearts really never should have tried to go all TikTok generation or whatever. It's fine. Whatever. But we already know that mu verbs work just like bu verbs, so next. Whoa! Whoa! Okay. Wow. That got dark. Hazukashinu. To die from being embarrassed. All right, but yeah, we don't need to do this one either because nu verbs behave basically the same as bu verbs and mu verbs. All right, fine. Eh? 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 A red one? Is this cherry? I mean, cool. Cherry's pretty great, actually, but still not a white one. But yeah, we can look at matsu. Matsu is a verb that means to wait for, but often in kind of a poetic sense, I see it in a way that implies to pine for somebody longingly. And actually, I love that because matsu is also a noun that means pine tree. So matsu means pine tree, and matsu as a verb means to pine for somebody. So it's like a pun. Get it? Pine? Pine for? Har har. Anyway, let's put up our matrix thing really quickly, huh? Okay, so here's matsu, right? To wait for. And so godon verbs that end in tsu, u, and also godon verbs that end in ru. Those are godon verbs that look like ichidan verbs, but in fact are not. These are all going to follow a very similar pattern to matsu here. So we have matsu, and then in the past, that's going to become matta. We're dropping the tsu in favor of a small tsu plus ta to create the plain past. And then we got matanai, don't wait. Matanakatta, did not wait. Machimasu, machimashita, machimasen, machimasen deshita, and finally, matte, which you often hear as kind of a soft command, matte, which is short for matte kudasai, wait for me. Not too bad, right? This one's pretty easy. Ugh. Brown? Is this soda flavored? Oh, actually, that would slap. Nope. Nope. It's chocolate. Ew. Ew, that's actually kind of a gross chocolate flavored, actually. Why did they make it taste like pure bitter cacao? Gross. Anyway, hanao-kao, right? The kao here is our verb that we know is a godon verb, and it ends in u, and we know that that's going to work just like matsu. So, kao, katta, kainai, kainakatta, and so on and so on and so on. All right, come on, there has to be a white one in this bag somewhere. What the heck? Is this supposed to be lavender? Okuru, to give as a present. All right, okuru. Okuru, okutta, okanai, okanakatta, okimasu, okimashita, okimasen, okimasen deshita, okutte. All right, moving on. Kissu suru. Lemon? Lemon? Pucker up for your kiss? No, we already did a suru verb. Please, please, can I have a white one, please? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? A black one? Licorice? No. No. I'm not. I'm out. I'm not gonna do this one. No. Oh, yeah. And no quiz this week. I'm gonna go sit under a tree and pout about not getting to eat any of the white hearts. Mata ne.